So like I said earlier, I want to go over some final thoughts, maybe some deck ideas for the Claw and Dagger cards, and at the same time, I think we'll go over the patch notes for 11.4, because some of these might synergize with the new decks and new cards, and I kind of want to make sure that we get the full picture of what's coming out with the patch. So, as far as 11.4, yeah, we got Claw and Dagger, birthday party event. So no neutral cards got changed. Okay, usually they don't do too many changes with the card drop patches, but okay. Monsters, we got some here. Armored Arrakis, power from 6 to 5. Right now, Armored Arrakis is give a unit bleeding equal to its base power. Looks like we're having a big change here. So 5 power. Deploy if there's another unit on this row, another card on this row even. So you can't even play this melee if you have out your stratagem. Lock Self. That's actually really interesting. You can't play this melee and then Crystal Skull. You can still play it ranged, but I'm sure someone will mess that up. Timer 3, if the row is full, boost self by 12. Okay, so it's an 8 provision card, right? So it's a 17 for 8 if you let this go off. That shouldn't be too hard to stop. Obviously, this goes in the Arrakis form. I don't know if we'll be playing this one in particular. I already have most of the decks set for what I want to play coming up, but I don't think we'll be trying this one out. But it is interesting. It has a very high ceiling. 17 for 8 is pretty fantastic, if we're being honest here. So that's interesting. It goes... The only thing is at 5, it's going to be hard to keep alive. I think you want to play this round 1 and then put Crystal Skull on it. I think that's what you do. Otherwise, I see this very easily getting answered. Still interesting, though. So then we have Indraga Queen. I was expecting this to get changed, and here we go. Consume an allied unit, gain armor equals provision cost. Much better. So you just consume a 4 provision unit, you get 4 armor, and then you'll spawn a drone for the next 6 turns. It's not the most efficient because generally a card is worth more than its provisions. So a 4 provision card is usually worth like 7 points or so if it's a good one. So you're losing out on points potentially, but you're gaining that in those drones you're going to spawn, which is fantastic for helping out the deck. A lot of the new cards need you to spawn drones, especially the Acid Spit. You really need to be spawning drones a lot. So this is good for that. And it already has 2 armor. So it's a 6 for 7 with 2 armor, so it's 8 for 7 right now. The other thing that this works really well with is the Kikimor Worker. It destroys a unit and spawns a copy of itself. You can consume one of those. I think would be ideal. This is good. Eider, provision changed from 7 to 9. We knew this was coming. It made an infinite loop before, so we knew he was getting reworked. Yeah. With a new card, I mean. So 9 provisions. Whenever your opponent plays a unit on their side of the battlefield, damage it by 1. So that part is just the long ship from Skellige. And gain a charge. Okay, so it's long ship plus an effect. Interesting. So this seems good. Yeah, so you're getting another way to spawn drones. The fact that it's on a charge is so good, though. Like, the fact this is on a charge is incredibly impactful. Because you get, say you have 5 charges, that's all you need for Acid Spit. This goes so well with Acid Spit, which is a card I was a little concerned with wouldn't have enough synergies, but it looks like we're going to have enough. And yeah, this is such a good change. We're going to be adding this. Well, this is already in the deck because I kind of knew to get changed. But we're going to have to maybe move a couple provisions around because the provision changed. But we'll make it work. Definitely something you want to be playing in these Monsters Swarm decks, I think. Kikimor Queen, new part of ability. Whenever you play an organic card, trigger, own, thrive. Thank you. This is such a good change because Kikimor Queen has basically no synergy with Kikimors and the Arrakis Swarm, other than the fact that you spawn the insectoids with it for it to boost. But they're not really tall, other than the 7 with armor, which isn't good because it just dies. But yeah, other than that, they don't really trigger Thrive, so it didn't fit very well in the deck. This, though, fantastic. We're definitely playing this. Is this worth as much as like Koshé, where we'd want to be playing Caranthier? I'm not sure, honestly. But this seems very good for Like, the only time you used to see Kikimor Queen is you'd play it with, like, Lilith's Omen and Kashe behind a defender or something, but I'm glad we can actually play it in Arrakis Swarm. Like, as it probably was originally meant to be played. Glad to see this. Definitely a good one. We'll be trying that out. Nilfgaard, no changes. Northern Realms, no changes. Scoia'tael, no changes. Okay. I see it. Corrupted Flaminica. We were going to play this anyway in our new Rain deck, but let's see what they changed. Deploy boost self by 2 for each unique beast. That seems quite good, actually. So, here's the difference. Let's say we have Roach Knickers plus a Savage Bear, for example. And then, I don't know, just like some other random beast, like a little half for... That's 4. That's a 12 for 7. Previously, that would have been an 8 for 7. And the reason it's so good is you don't really want to be playing duplicates of all these cards. Like, you're going to play your Squirrel if you draw it. You're going to play probably a Savage Bear if you draw it. You might probably want to discard the other one. But stuff like that little half for you don't have to play both. They'll get the bonded. So, this is probably just better than it was before. And with the number of beasts being added for Rain, which is why I wanted to try this out in the Rain deck, this can be really big, right? I think my Rain deck has like 9 unique beasts. So this could be incredibly big. Yeah, that would be a massive finisher. I think this is actually quite good now. A lot of it comes down to the new cards being added being beasts, so it's just a lot more value for it. I think this is actually quite good. Chirsek Bearmanager, he's getting changed as well. So 2 power instead of 4. Boost self by the number of unique allied beasts. Okay, that's interesting. There's a couple different things here. So, okay, we should finish reading his ability. Order damage yourself by own boost and damage my enemy gets by 1. Okay, so you can get some spread damage. Maybe if everything's at 2, you can hit it with this and then the Storm or Rain will kill it. That's fine. Also going to be really good against Arrakis Swarm. I mean, Rain in general is fantastic against Arrakis Swarm. Storm's even better. But yeah, so this seems pretty good. So if you have 5 beasts, 5 unique beasts, he is a 7. That doesn't feel great if we're being honest. It's helped quite a bit by the fact that the Siren you can get off of the Rain leader charge, and the Crow from the Ouroboros, Mask of Ouroboros, and what's it called? Axel, right? The Druid guy. Those are also beasts. So that's like 2. If you're playing discard package, you discard Morkvarg. That's 3 beasts. I guess it's not too bad to get to 7. It'll be a bit annoying, but it definitely has some potential. We'll see. We'll see about this one. It is interesting, but I'm not sure we'll be trying it out. Maybe a 1 of. As far as Syndicate, we have a Boris change. So, a start of your turn wherever this card is, wherever it is, randomly change fee to a different cost between 1 and 9. Oh, this is going to be interesting. Fee, whatever the number is, move self to the other row and boost self by the fee cost. Showing a 1-for-1 spend, but if you go to 0 coins, you gain a coin for each allied unit on that row. So, this goes with those 0 coin things. I don't think we're trying this out because I'm going to be playing the new cards in Bounty, which we'll get to right after this, what my ideas are for the new cards. But this has potential to theoretically give you around 4 or 5 points a turn, which is insane. But you have to spend all those coins, and here's the problem I see. Say you play this, and the fee's, 4, right? So you play it, it moves to the other row and gives you those 4 coins back. Next turn the fee goes to 9. That's expensive. And the other thing is you really have to, say you do the fee 9, right? You might not have 5 or not, you might not have that many units in the row you move Boris to. So this could be this just seems very hard to manage. A lot of the 0 coin stuff already is very hard to manage. If you try and make a deck with it, or like theory craft the decks before it comes out, you kind of see that. The idea of like how are we getting down to 0 coins can be kind of difficult to manage, and this makes it even more difficult. but the payoff is there. So we'll be trying this out at some point. I just don't think right away. Let's check the game fixes, because sometimes they hide random big changes here. At least some games do. I don't know if Gwent does. I don't think I can recall the last time there's a big change here. Stockpile, blah, blah, blah. These work with fees that have cooldowns. Okay, that's never going to matter unless you're playing Arena, probably. Dwim Vyandra no longer... Oh, this is a good one, actually. This is actually somewhat important. Dwim Vyandra no longer grants Zeal. If you cast Dwim Vyandra now, well, not cast, or you play her range, she resets the order. It resets it ready to be used. I always thought that was weird, because that's giving it location. Like, is that weird? Yeah, it's weird. Because I used to play, if you any of you have played Siege Duels, you know, what's his name? Varaxis. He resets it and gives it Zeal. Dwim Vyandra doesn't say that. So I always kind of thought that was weird. But yeah, this just makes the Dwim Vyandra tempo much less. Because if you play her on, I don't know, Mushy Truffle, you can't play the Golden Froth the same turn. I kind of like that, but the only decks that really benefit from these locations right now are Reavers. So it's kind of a nerf to Reavers tempo, but I just think it makes more sense this way. And then the contract. Okay, so that's the changes. Now let's get into probably what you guys want to see is some final thoughts on the Claw and Dagger cards, some deck ideas, what we're going to be doing with them. So some final thoughts on the Claw and Dagger cards, some deck ideas. I'm not going to go in depth here. We're just going to like brainstorm some ideas of what I've been thinking about. So as far as the Northern Realms ones, this one's pretty straightforward. These guys all go together. Redanian Secret Service, I'm not sure about. Like I want it to be good, but then again, I mean, it has good synergies with Drakenborg, but I don't think that's really be worth it. If the opponent, if Lock is meta, like if Renfrey Nilfgaard's meta with all of its locks, which it probably will be because it didn't get nerfed again. This is a good counter to Lock. If the opponent just locks your guy, this comes out and unlocks it, so that might be good enough. But at 6 provisions, I'm probably not playing this. But it's an interesting card. As far as the rest, Sigi seems extremely good, especially with, in my opinion, you probably want to play like an All God with Offerings on him. If you just play both Offerings and All God targets him, he goes like plus 12. It becomes a 16. The Inspired Zeal plays something from your deck. It's already fantastic. So I think that's what we're going to be doing. And then you play these guys. You probably play Dandelion in that deck too, which is what we're going to do. Drakenborg. You can make an insane finish with Archgriffin, potentially. The problem with these guys that I've found when like planning out decks to make is that they take up a lot of your high provisions, especially Sigi and Drakenborg, and it's kind of hard to fit the Temple of Melitele and Prince Ansei stuff into the same deck, especially if you want Amphibious Assault or if you want to play like a Siege version. It's actually kind of hard to fit Mutagenerator as well for all the 5 provision guys. I mean, you can definitely make that one work because it's not that expensive. Probably should as well, but overall, I think this card set is interesting, but I'm not sure how good it will be. The Sigi finisher, I think, will be insane. What I've been thinking about in particular is you can go for the Offerings and then All God, and that's pretty much all you need to deck boost for Sigi to be good, because you already have, at that point, your All God's boosting, what, 4 guys? Or is it 5 guys? I forget after the buff. It's buffing a bunch of guys in your deck. And then you can go Sigi, Inspired Zeal, and basically just play whatever your choices were that you boosted with the Offerings, or not the Offering, the All God in addition to him. So that seems just good on its own, and it already fits in kind of the existing Mutagenerator deck, potentially as an alternative to the Temple of Melitele. So I see that as being pretty good here, and that's probably what we're going to go for. As far as the monsters cards, Arrakis Swarm is pretty obviously probably the only way to play these, which is okay. Like Arrakis Swarm needed some help. Aspit I was the least sure about, but after seeing the changes to the other guys, Eater in particular, and then Andraga Queen, this becomes much better, and I think we're quite happy with this. Kikimor Hatchling, we want to keep that alive, and then Kikimor Stalker. So I think Stalker, the fact that Eater's getting changed to what he is, to have the charges, immensely helps all these cards, especially these two. Like Acid Spit and Kikimor, Stalker gets so much better when you have charges you can spam out. It was honestly kind of the point where, before I saw the changes to Eater and the Arrakis Queen, Kikimor Queen, and the ones we just looked at, I actually considered running Jermaine Piquant into here, but seeing that we have other ways to spawn a bunch of guys, because the reason why I was thinking about that is we want to spawn a bunch of charges to trigger the acid spit, and we won't have potentially any 1-power guys for the Granite Core, and then Jermaine kind of helps out with that. But it looks like that won't be a problem. We can probably save leader charges for the Glusty Warp. I said Granite Core, I meant Glusty Warp. So that seems good. I think we'll be trying that out. Acid Spit's the one I'm least sure about, but you could probably make it work in a long round. The problem is, like, you need to trigger it right away, but there seems to be probably enough ways to do that. And you can always play damage cards like the 3 damage boost by 3 stuff, or the 4 damage Arrakis. What's it called? The one that looks like an Arrakis eats it and does excess damage, creates drones. So there's ways to do damage. I think it'll be fine. As far as the Rain cards, obviously I'm most excited for these because Rain's one of my favorite decks. Kelpie, I've been looking through the theory crafting stuff. Well, theory crafting my own stuff, not looking through it. And I think we can actually safely get this to 5 turns of Rain on deploy. And that's amazing. If you just do 5 turns of Rain on deploy, that's almost an entire round of like a medium length round. And then you can Fukusha this back if you want to, and that's all your Rain again. So that's potentially very good. I was underestimating this when I first saw it, but after seeing how many beasts there are, and how many beasts we can run fairly easily, I really like this thing. And then the boost by all the unboosted guys. I really want to synergize this with the offering to the soup. I'm not sure we can really justify it in the deck because, well, we'll get to why in a minute, but this seems really good. And then we have Sea Serpent, obviously is good with the Rain and Storm in a long round. Long rounds are already really good for you, but if they kill your messengers from the sea, which happens a lot, this at least gives you some other benefit from a long round. And the Anglerfish is obviously just really good. As like it's good to have a thinning card. It's good that it's a beast, so it synergizes with some of the other stuff. Then Kraken is by far my favorite card of this set, and one of my favorite cards in the game because the flavor is so cool, and it's one of my favorite decks, and I just think it's really awesome. The only problem with Kraken, which is what I was hinting at earlier, is you have to kill the Kraken, and Rain doesn't really organically play a lot of damage, like targeted damage cards. Usually what you do is you play like a Heat Wave, or maybe a Giga Scorpion Decoction with the lady who replays an alchemy. You know who I'm talking about. It's late, guys. I forgot the name when I'm tired. But yeah, so that seems really good. So what I think we'll do is I think we'll be playing Discard Package, because you want consistency in this deck anyway. Kelpie and Kraken are cards you want to see, and if your deck's not consistent, you're not going to see them. So I think what we do is we run Discard Package and then play Erendite. And then you Erendite the Kraken. I think it's going to be the best thing here. You can also play the Giga Scorpion Decoction. The only thing with that is if they boost it at all, it becomes very hard to kill. The Storm will damage it by 1. And one thing to note, if you're making Storm and Rain, is that Gutting Slash is actually pretty easy to trigger, and you can run it as a 4 version in a lot of these decks and kill the Kraken with it. I just don't really want to rely on that. If they have any boost at all, they'll put it on Kraken. It might be hard to kill. It's also worth noting, you could play Dandelion Vainglory. We are not going to. Someone will, and it's going to be hilarious. But yeah, these are really exciting. One more thing to note here is that Kelpie... Kelpie is an interesting one. I don't think you can play in much other than Rain. It does have good value, but I don't think the other Skellige decks really play enough beasts for it, unfortunately. There are some in the Druids, mostly you're spawning those and creating them. So that's probably not going to cut it. But Kraken is very interesting. I think Kraken could fit in a lot of Skellige decks. If we just compare it to, albeit a Power Crept card in the Wild Boar of the Sea, it just seems a little better. And the fact that it moves things to the same row and does damage, I think a lot of decks that just like a mid-range a Skellige deck could make use of this. And I really do want to try this, combining it with Dagger. Dagger in this seems very cool. So maybe you can do that in some kind of warrior deck. With like maybe even a Svalblood. That's probably asking too much, but yeah, these seem really good. Very excited to try them out. Mostly just Rain cards. Now we get into something that I had the hardest time trying to figure out where to use it, which is the Syndicate stuff. I still think Casimir is probably really good. The reason why I think he's good is because of Bounty. I was trying to figure out where would we play these guys. The guard obviously is like just a good spender. He particularly for me made me think of Firesworn. Firesworn typically doesn't have a lot of coins to spend, but when they do, this would be a good thing to use for it. And obviously, if you're getting your coins reduced to 0, that's fine. And then we have the Open Sesame as well. I think this is just going to replace the cards I was using to gain coins in Bounty, and I'll talk about why Bounty in a minute. But the thing with these guys is they all want you to go to 0 coins. There are 2 things I thought of when we saw this. 3 things. 1, you have fee 1s. Fee 1s, you can spam out all the coins and go to 0. The second thing is, if you pay a tribute, go to 0 and trigger King of Beggars. I think that would count as going to 0 coins, which means in King of Beggars decks, this 0 coins thing is a lot easier to trigger. If you play something like Collusion or even just an off-the-books deck, like a mid-range deck, a lot of the times when you pay your tributes, you go to 0 coins, or like you use 2 coins from your leader, and then you pay the tribute and go to 0. So I think it wouldn't be too hard to trigger that in these conditions in that deck. So that's worth noting. You do get the coins back, so you have to do it again. And the last thing I thought about was Bounty, because in Bounty, a lot of the time, you just spend all your coins down to 0, and the last coins, like a Witch Hunter Executioner, a Tunnel Drill, or a Freak Show hit to kill something with Bounty, then you get the coins back. So I think that would also count as going to 0 coins. That's why we're going to try it out, because Casimir synergizes really well with Bounty. He just gives you more damage, and more damage is good. You can even play, I think this actually justifies playing Purge, because you're always going to be able to set up that Death Blow, or at least most of the time. I think that'll make that pretty interesting. So we're going to try him in Bounty. I think you can play him in other places too, just Bounty seems natural, because you're going to be spending those coins down to 0 as often as possible. It's annoying that he's a high version card, because Bounty has some trouble with the upper range, right? You're always playing Brute, you're always playing Scoundrel, you're always playing Bank, because you need consistency. And then you have your Moriels, your Graydon. And then there's like another card spot there usually. You can usually fit one more, and you can go like Witchfinder or Professor, depending if you want a mid-range. You could probably fit him in there, but it means you probably have to cut one of those, which is going to be annoying. Like maybe no Witchfinder. We'll see. But this seems like it goes well in Bounty. And in general, I think it's just pretty good. The only thing is going down to 0 coins might be too hard. I thought about running this in a Collusion deck with the Pirate's Cove, because you can spawn that Sea Jackal to spend the coins down to 0. That might be the idea worth pursuing. The only problem with that is Pirate's Cove doesn't really generate you any coins. And to go to 0 coins, I think you actually have to have coins first. You can't just like start your turn at 0 coins. So that kind of is why I was leaning towards the King of Beggars Bounty type of stuff. But interesting. That's what we'll be trying out here. Oxenfurt Guard, I think, is just a decent spender in a lot of decks. And Open Sesame, the delayed coins, you could probably use it with a lot of interesting combos. So here's what I'm thinking for the Open Sesame that's particularly interesting. The Eveline Gallo, a lot of what I said for Casimiri goes the same thing for that. But Open Sesame, there's something I want to mention, because I think you can make some really cool combos with double Open Sesame and Sigi. So Sigi's Tribute 8, or even just 1. If you just trigger this in round 3 and get the 4 coins from the counter going down, you can then use that for a Sigi combo in round 3 without having as many coins saved over. So I think that would be an interesting use. We might try something like that, but I just wanted to mention it. I think this just replaces, in a lot of ways, in any deck where you can go to 0 coins consistency like Bounty, I just think this just replaces your coin spender and you're not coin spender, your coin generator, like your Confession Extractor or something early game. It's interesting. It is more expensive, but it is interesting. As far as the Scoia'tael cards, these are the ones I'm least sure about. Cargo is Cargo and the Heist are kind of scary in a way. One thing I want to mention is that if you have something like the Caretaker that purifies every other turn, I believe you can get up to, without having to do anything crazy other than purifying a lot, you can get up to a ton of Waylays. So I think Waylay will love Heist. The reason why is Vanadene's a soldier. You play Vanadane, you get 2 Waylays into your hand. Next turn, you cargo the Vanadane. shuffle the 2 waylays you just put into your hand into your deck, and add 2 more to your hand. And all of a sudden, you have 4 waylays in your deck. Your list is going to shuffle 2 more in. That's 6. And then if you make one off of the scenario and then shuffle that back in, you have 7 if you don't play both out of your hand. 7 waylay Simlaws? That's nuts. But if you're purifying the prepared status off your Vanadane, you can potentially get up to like 17, I think. You can get up to 17 waylays if you like renew it in round 2 or something. That's a complete meme, I think. But it has some really good synergies with waylay, so I think we might see it there. Also really good in traps, because you have a lot of deploys in traps. The only thing is that the guy whose name I can't pronounce that creates the trap from your starting deck doesn't have a tag. It's just an elf, so I think this has a lot of potential. There's also some good dwarf abilities. And echo cards are kind of hard to evaluate, right? Like, you could say every cargo is worth about 3.7 provisions, and then you're like, well, what about when I play it again next round? Does that mean that I've made 6 cargos, and each one's only worth 1.8 provisions? And in that case, pretty much any deploy ability is going to be worth triggering if it gives you at least 3 points. So Heist, I think, has an insane ceiling, and I think there's a lot of places you can use it. So that's very cool. As far as Trickster, it's like a good tech card. It's a good elf card. I think all the elf decks are going to play it. It's just good. Backup plan, it's interesting for deck building purposes. Like, which elves do you include? So you can generate the ones later. Do you just include all the 4 provision ones? So this makes the 5 provision ones, and you can save 5 provision or a provision or 2 in your deck building. I think maybe that's interesting as well. So overall, oh yeah, and then we have Teliana. So she, I think, works best in traps because of the shuffle back in 9 to play top elf with a deploy. The top elf with the deploy, you don't really want that to be a bronze. Technically, you can probably shuffle in a Deadeye token and get whatever you want and be pretty happy. But in traps in particular, you can put back your Yorvith or something like that. I think that would be really good. And since her elf with the deploy doesn't have to have a bandit tag like the cargo does, you can do this on your the guy whose name I can't pronounce again. It creates a trap. So I think this might be better in traps. That's worth noting. But she is just really good overall. And needing a prepared card is not too bad because of the echo on the Heist. You don't really have to save it. One more thing I want to mention with the Heist is that there are some completely bonkers abilities you can trigger with this. So just imagine you've got your 10 Deadeyes out, and then you trigger your Vernaciel again. That's 20 points off of one of these cargoes. Now, there was something similar to this that existed for a while, and that was Siege Duels. I think I mentioned this deck already today. It's funny how it's coming back. But in Siege Duels, it was almost always worth it to kill the Onsace or the Seltkirk after it had dueled you, because the upside of the opponent resetting it and then dueling you again was too bad. Like, that was just too good for them and too bad for you that you didn't want to happen. I think we might get a similar situation here where you have to kill the Vernaciel if they're playing the Heist, so they don't cargo it. The nice thing is you have to wait a turn, or they have to wait a turn if they have the cargoes, but I think we might just get in that situation where you have to kill their finisher card before they can reactivate it again, because Isengrim's really good with this. Well, Isengrim's fantastic if you're playing the elves. Vernaciel is fantastic, so I think that you might just have to kill these guys, which is very interesting. Overall, I kind of like these cards. I'm not so sure about how good they'll be. I think we will see cargo at least experimented with in Waylays, but Waylays is pretty refined at this point, so I'm not sure how well it fits, but at least try it out. I'm most curious how it does in something like Dwarves, where there are good deploys. Stuff like the Marauder, where you get boosts by armor. This has a very, very high ceiling with those, because those are all soldiers, and the Heist doesn't have to be elves, remember. So the Dwarves are pretty much all soldiers. Some are warriors, but there are some really good payoffs in there, like the Dwarf that boosts by 1 for every Dwarf you have, the armor ones. So I see Heist having a lot of places in Scoia'tael, which is really good. I love when they have cards like this that have really good spots in multiple decks, so you can use them in different places. So that's interesting. I really like it. And last, we have Nilfgaard for the, they're Clog cards and they're Colgrim cards. There's not really a way around it. I think that's pretty much what you're doing here, Clog and Colgrim. And I know everyone loves those decks. But to be fair, at least they're putting the cards on the bottom, so you're not getting clogged on top of your deck. But it still goes in that deck. Only things I really want to mention here is that this makes Cyprian Wily look really bad, the Contaminator, and that there's some really interesting things with Sandor and Abduction you can do. So a Fairy Merchant, for example, for the Abduction, if you just Merchant the top card of your deck to your opponent's deck, it's probably going to be less than 10 provisions, or 10 or less, and then you just Abduction it, and that's really good. Assuming it was like a bronze. Now, Nilfgaard has a lot of ways to stack their deck and stuff like that, so especially in like a round 3, say you played, or even round 2, just say you played your Yonkel Wait, and you're like, oh, okay, we'll just a Fairy Merchant and Abduction. I mean, it's probably not like meta good, but it could be interesting. And you can also just Abduction both. If you have Sandor's Order go off, you've already shuffled the card into their deck, then you get the drone. That's both targets for Abduction. Like, you only need 2 targets. So you could potentially just go this and this for Abduction value. That might be really interesting. But overall, yes, it's like a Colgrim stuff. I think it's pretty much the extent what we're going to do here. I don't really see another way to use these guys. I could be missing something. But Sandor and Abduction, though, you can use in a different combination of stuff. But that's what I think about the cards and the patch, what we're going to be trying out. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll definitely be trying some decks out in the coming days. And hopefully you want to stick around and watch those. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time. That'll be it for this one, guys. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next time. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more. And you can check out some more videos over here. And thanks for watching.